Hey, everybody, I have Tom Courts with me, and we are going to hit on a few subjects of interest. Off the top, let's talk about Deebo Samuel and what's going on with him and the Niners. I know he's playing the social media game, trying to maybe back the Niners into a corner once that new contract. And I know you have some opinions on that and how it basically relates to that do business as opposed to the way the Rams do business. So fill us all in what's going on with Samuel and the 49ers.
Yeah, well, Deebo, obviously everybody knows he took down his social media as it relates to the Niners. But what's interesting about that is that he did it in a very specific way. I mean, he actually went through all of his photos from on Instagram essentially forever, in the last, essentially 2 years, and took down anything as it related to the Niners. There was 80 pictures reportedly, and one by one, and he left everything up. So it was a lot of work. It wasn't just a sort of let's take down the Niners, on his front page or something like that, which some of the other people have done. So that is, if you read into that, it may be a indication that, he's very unhappy with how the conversations are going between his representation and the Niners. But, obviously from his perspective, Davante Adams, Tyreek Hill get their deals. And then this was all triggered right after Stephon Diggs got his extension. And to summarize those deals, they're roughly $20 to $25 million a year. And just as importantly is the guaranteed money, which is, 65 for Adams and 72 for Diggs, and Tyreek, I think around 70. So 65 to 70 roughly in guaranteed money. And so from Deebo's perspective, he's 26, entering the prime of his career. These guys are sort of, on their second contracts and kind of maybe heading into at the peak of their careers now, and maybe heading into decline. He accounted for 25%, roughly 27% of San Francisco's entire offense last year. And only three other players in the league were in that realm. And then on top of that, he's really innovated this wide back position, and in a big way. I mean, obviously it was Shanahan's plan, but without a player like Deebo, you're not going to be able to do it. Somebody that has that kind of speed, but also that kind of physicality that can take those kind of that kind of a beating coming out of the backfield like he did running into linemen and linebackers. So that's Deebo's perspective is, hey, I've meant everything to you guys. I've given you everything I can. Everything you've asked for. I've taken a beating physically to try and get us over the hump, and I want to get paid. And I want to get paid with the top players in the league.
But you also think, if I understand what you told me earlier before we had this conversation, you're wondering if the Niners are willing to do that based on their business model.
Yeah, and so from the team's perspective, from the Niners' perspective, those three receivers that got paid, those top receivers in the league, they're all performed at an all-pro level for multiple years. Got teams over their playoff teams, Super Bowl champion in the case of Tyreek Hill. Davante Adams obviously been performing for many years. Same with Stephon Diggs, at a top level for multiple years. And Deebo has only performed at that level for 1 year. He did not have a good first year. He was injured, and he really emerged for 1 year. So from their perspective, hey, show us another year and show us that you can stay on the field and stay healthy and continue to perform, and then we'll look at your extension after year 3. So Deebo's still on his rookie contract, and if they have the team has all the leverage, right? They can, worst case for Deebo, they could have him play this year out at his rookie deal around $4 million or whatever it is, and then theoretically could franchise tag him each of the next 2 years. And that's not where any player wants to be. Certainly, I think the Niners wouldn't want it to be there, but at the end of the day, that's the leverage that they have. Those are the rules. Not a lot of people don't like it, but it is, and it happens. So uh, how, and then the other thought is, are the Niners going to pay top dollar for that position, right? Are they going to extend somebody for 70, with a $70 million guarantee when the most they've ever extended somebody is much lower than that. That's not their norm. So the that's really where we're at. And then the whole other rub to this, Mark, is that this is not just a Deebo Samuel San Francisco 49er conversation. This is something's happened in the league over the last 3 months where the wide receiver position is just inflated in their contract sizes dramatically, and these trades that are happening are almost quarterback like in terms of what teams are giving up to get these top receivers and then paying them top
Even the
dollar.
Christian Kirk contract.
Christian Kirk, many see as a number 2 wide receiver, but the draft picks that the Las Vegas gave up for Devontae Adams and Miami gave up for Tyreek Hill, and the kind of money they're getting paid, and the reason that that's so there's such a debate around that is because at the very same time we're seeing these wide receivers coming out and performing extremely well right away in their rookie rookie years. Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle and Justin Jefferson and
right.
Devontae Smith, and the list goes on. And it doesn't. This year's draft is everybody's talking about the wide receivers. As many as 5 could go in the top 15 or 20. So on the one hand, you have people paying top dollar, and on the other hand, there's this glut of wide receivers that's available, and so the question is, relating back to Deebo, is which camp are the 49ers in? Right, we know what camp the Packers were in. Let's let him go. We'll get draft picks. We'll save a ton of money on the cap and be able to draft some guys and plug them in. And it's the same thing that the Chiefs feel. And so the question is, where are the 49ers? Are they in we're going to pay top dollar in the Miami, Las Vegas camp, or are they in hey, let's cash them in for assets and draft some guys that can plug in and play right away?
Yeah, and the other side of it is, a lot of times teams are willing to pay top dollar to their top performers when they have a quarterback on a rookie contract, but usually those are cases when your quarterback is a known quantity and has proven himself. And I'm not sure if that's true of Trey Lance. I'm sure they're certainly hopeful he is that guy. And okay, we have him on a rookie contract for the next 3 years or whatever. So let's go ahead and spend the money on Deebo. And then the downside, of course, if it doesn't work out, I mean, Trey Lance taking over the reins, having Deebo there would be so important for him to be able to lean on Deebo. And if he doesn't have him, if things go sideways, that's bad news for the 49ers, in my opinion.
Exactly. And, you're right. Exactly right. The rookie quarterbacks tend to find some receivers that they can really rely on, that they trust. And usually it's a tight end. It's somebody that they can give a quick pass to and be able to see kind of over the middle. And so Kittle's there, obviously. Ayuk's certainly proven himself. But you're right. Deebo would be very important to Trey Lance's success. So it'll be interesting to see what they ultimately do, how they treat it. The other consideration, of course, is the salary cap is going up a lot, right? It's going to be potentially 230, 240 next year, and then up to even potentially even 300 the following year, with given all this new TV money and Amazon money coming into the NFL. So a lot of these deals that have been signed over the last year or two are looking pretty good right now. Patrick Mahomes' contract, it's almost a bargain at this point. And, because he was signed for 10 years. And so, but those things will get renegotiated. But the point is that signing people at top dollar right now doesn't mean it's going to be top dollar in a year or two. And so the 49ers may look at that and sort of maybe compromise and say, hey, we'll give you 65 million guaranteed Deebo, average per year of 25. Let's put it at 2 years, and make it 50 guaranteed, and guarantee the whole thing. And that way, if you don't stay healthy, then we're not on the hook for multiple years. And if you do stay healthy, then you can get paid either by us or somebody else. So there's a lot of ways to go.
Okay, hey, let's move on to Bobby Wagner. There was a lot of discussion. I think there was a lot of misunderstanding going on about what his contract actually was. And I know some media personalities got involved in that discussion. Wagner represents himself, and a lot of people are saying, hey, he could have got more money from the Ravens. He turned it down for the Rams. I read one article talking about how the Rams went too deep on this contract and they're going to end up getting bitten by it. But if the details of this contract are that I understand now as they're playing out, it actually gives the Rams an escape clause. But I would rather you try to explain it because I think you have a better grasp of it.
Yeah, so the way that it is very intricate, and what's interesting about how intricate it is that Bobby Wagner, negotiated this himself, right? The layers to this contract are actually quite complex, but in summary, it's essentially uh, uh, the the worst case is it's 2 years, 17.5 million, with up to 23 million, 23.5 million. So another $6 million in bonuses. So it would put him at about $8 million a year average for the first 2 years, with up to an additional 3 million in bonuses per year. And there many contracts, given the expectation that the cap will increase next year. There's only a $2.5 million cap hit this year for what it's worth, but a lot of contracts have been negotiated in that fashion, including, say, notably for Rams, Stafford's contract. I think is only a $7.5 million cap hit this year. So, but when you look at it further, the way it plays out is it's essentially averages about $9.5 million a year over 5 years. But the Rams have per year over 5 years. But the Rams have escape hatches where the dead money isn't that bad if they want to get out in year
And can't
three,
they get
four, or
out of it
five.
as early as before? Can't they get it out of it as soon as next year?
They can. There's a bit much bigger dead money hit if they do it next year, but after year two, if they get out of it, then the dead money hit is nominal.
Yeah,
So
it
that's why
seems like
people are reporting it as essentially a 2 year
right.
deal, 9 million a year, 8 million a year with an additional 3 million a year in bonuses, and that's
This seems like a good deal for both sides. It seems like Wagner gets a chance to. It's kind of a prove it deal, where he's going to get some real money up front though, and he gets to play in LA. And if it doesn't work out, the Rams can escape at the right moment. And I don't. Everybody wins from what I can see. It looks like a good contract for both sides.
Yeah, it is. It's the way they staged it is, as long as he continues to perform, he gets paid. Sort of in that $10 million a year range, and it's a kind of a year to year thing, right? It's sort of already spelled out. They can, of course, always renegotiate it at any time depending on how things go, but essentially, it's like I say, a 2 year deal, for all practical purposes, with some heavy bonuses, and then it's a year to year deal after that at about $10 million.
Yeah, that's it was interesting to see the back and forth in the media about that, and I think it was because of the complexity and because Wagner doesn't have an agent, so he kind of had to speak for himself. But it was a little bit entertaining. Last thing I'd like to talk to you about, get your opinion on this. I have mine. A little bit of a battle between various Ram fans about they should pursue whether they should pursue the honey badger. Now, let me state my position on this. I see the Rams having four viable safeties. I mean, I think Fuller and Scott, I think, are the starters right now, perhaps Fuller and Rapp, but I think it'd be Fuller and Scott with Burgess and Rapp as the backups. That's not a bad safety room. You could certainly do worse. And meanwhile, we're a little short on cornerbacks. And now I talked to a few people and they said, the Ram model is if there's a good player out there, go get him. When they drafted Aaron Donald, they didn't need defensive linemen. When they drafted Todd Gurley, they didn't need running backs. They went out and got difference makers, though. And I understand that argument. My position is when you are strapped up against the cap, you just better take care of some other things first, perhaps, and not sign someone that's going to preclude you from making a move that may be more important. So that's my position. Would I be happy if the Rams signed the Honey Badger? Sure, I would be, but you also have to be aware. You have to be reasonable about it, and say, we may end up being a little bit shorthanded at cornerback down the road because we're so stocked at safety. That's my take on it. What's yours?
Yeah, the Rams don't traditionally pay top dollar for this position, right? This is a position that they feel at safety that they can draft guys and they can play right away. And we have, Jordan Fuller, Taylor Rapp, and Nick Scott, Terrell Burgess doing exactly that. And those are young guys that have a lot of athleticism. That obviously that secondary is led by Jalen Ramsey. They do have a hole at that other cornerback position for sure. And I don't see them signing Honey Badger at all. I think that other teams have a much higher premium and put a higher premium on that position. And we know what Seattle did with, for Jamal Adams, right? So I don't see the Rams doing it. Obviously, it's going to cost them a comp pick, which is something that's they hold near and dear to their hearts. It's essential that they accumulate comp picks in order to have those get the draft picks and retain those. So they've already given up one comp pick next year with the Allen Robinson signing, and so that's another reason that it sort of doesn't fit with their what they've done traditionally. So I don't see them doing it. I hope they don't do it. And I hope that they focus on cornerback and right guard in particular in the draft, and with a nod to the edge. Although I think we'll be fine with Hollins and Lewis, and maybe a midseason trade deadline signing, which is kind of what their MO has been at that particular position. But cornerback 2 and right guard are, in my opinion, massive holes for this team.
You have expressed interest in trading for the cornerback Bradbury.
Yeah, he's very expensive too, and who knows? I mean, we could see something happen during the draft with a trade, but he is going to be expensive. If they're going to pay somebody, it's going to be at cornerback. It's not going to be at safety, in my opinion.
That's a good. Putting it in perspective, who would you rather have? Bradbury to shore up we'd be solid at cornerback if we brought him on board through a trade, even giving up a safety if we had to. Who knows what? But I'd certainly rather have him than the Honey Badger at this point.
Yeah, so I think the Rams are going to be active during the draft. I think they're going to be jockeying. They might keep that third round pick, or some consider it a fourth round pick, because it's so far at the end of the third round, beyond the end of the third round. But go for a cornerback there, maybe a guard, inside lineman, and then after that, they may ultimately start to trade back and accumulate even more picks in the sort of the 5th, 6th, 7th round. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach it. But that's their MO. And
right. I mean, they've been so good at that. I'm sure they have a bunch of guys identified they'd love to have on the roster that might be there in the 6th and 7th round. So why not accumulate extra picks there? That's less need at his best. Okay, so I think that's a good discussion. Covered all three topics, and just a reminder, we're going to have you and Rob Wallia back up. Let me. I always say Rob. I don't know why. That's a good That's a good discussion. Covered all three topics. That's great. And a reminder, we're going to have Tom and Paul Wallia back on in a couple weeks for our pre-draft roundtable. That's going to be a lot of fun. But thanks for your time, Tom. And we'll do this again real soon, okay?
That's great. Thanks for having me.